Good afternoon. Welcome to a special meeting of the Oak Harbor City Council. This is a budget workshop meeting, I think, and I sure hope it is. It is Tuesday, October 30th, 1 p.m. We're scheduled to go from 1 p.m. until 5 p.m. today. No action should be taken on this agenda. I'll call the meeting to order at this time and go around the table here to introduce ourselves. I am Bob Severance, Oak Harbor Mayor.
Rick Olman, City Council.
Beth Munns, Mayor Pro Tem.
Joel Cervedia, City Council.
Patricia Soul, Finance Director.
Kathy Rosen, Public Works.
Blaine Oborn, City Administrator.
Thank you, and welcome to the audience here and anybody who might be watching or listening. We have one actual discussion item, so I assume it's going to take a few hours to get through discussion of capital improvements, equipment budgets, and long-term planning. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to our Finance Director, Patricia Soul.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to first orient you to some of the materials. So over on the two boards, we have blown up spreadsheets. So if people from that don't have a binder or don't have the detail, they can go over and look. The one on the right is the summary with the years and totals of all the projects. And the one on the left is a multitude of pages that Jessica will be turning as we go through that for council. Council members have a binder in front of them, and on the very, after you open the page, it lists the different sections. The first section is a 6-year project equipment plan timeline, which is the one large slide that has the dates on it. The second tab is the 6-year capital project and equipment plan. That one will be going through detailed. The next one is the one by year, so we'll go through each year. The fourth one is the 502 vehicle and equipment replacements from 19 to 24. And then the final one is actual detail of each project from Publisher, where it will describe each project that's listed. So it gives you a picture, a summary, and a detail about each project. So after today, this will give you something to look at as we move forward in the budget process. Again, this is the informational meeting. This is not decision making today. It's just showing you this is our final draft product that took all of the department heads and staff to put together. We tried very hard to minimize impact on funds. We looked at use of specialty funds, so we'll go through that in detail as we go. But I wanted to, I wanted to just go through that for everybody. Yep.
Is this the original one?
That was,
I pulled
that's,
it from over there.
yeah, that's the same one that you have, but you can have that one.
I didn't have the tabs in this one.
Yeah, that has the
Easier to
tabs.
follow.
Perfect. So Erica, this the binder shows the tabs, and the two large blown-ups are for community members that want to take a look at. The one thing I like about the one on the left is it has the whole summary, including the funding streams, on one page. You'll have to look at 2 pages on the 11.5 paper. So I'm going to give an overview, and then you guys will go through each section one at a time. So if you look at the first tab, this is, as I said, the overview of all of the projects over a 6-year period that we have estimated out. We have also numbered it on the left-hand side so it's easier for you guys to refer to as we go through. The second tab has this is the 6-year plan on 1 page, well, 4 pages. The first and second page are the each year's request and the different primary funds. The next 2 pages after that are the special funds that are being utilized, pages 3 and 4. Then the next one that we'll probably spend most of our time on is the year by year. So each one of these is a year. So the first one is 19, the next one's 20, and those are the only 2 years we're going to be asking council for action on. The next 4 pages you'll hear more about from Steve and CAC when they go through the CIP plan, but this is just showing also, not only is it in the comprehensive plan, but it's also in our long-range financial plan, so you can see the impact on some of the funds and the costs based on each fund. So that's 21 through 24 are the next 4 pages. The next tab is the 502, which is our equipment replacement fund, and this lists all of the outflow from that fund by each department each year for the 4 years. And then if you go to the next page, it starts listing the details of what's going to be replaced in 19, 20, 21, 22, and then the last page gives you 24 at this point in the plan. So this is, first 2 years are really solid as far as we think, but after that things could change. So again, it's just a plan. And then the last section, this is the section that I think is going to be most informative for the readers of the financial statements as well as council, is it goes through every fund with a project description, the need, the development plan status, how we anticipate the budget to look, and what the funding streams are by project. So if you're going through this, this is in the same order as the projects that are on every list. So as you go through, you want to look into one of these projects, you can go back here and pull the projects to look at. So is everybody oriented, or am I going too fast? Okay. So let's go back to the front page, tab 1, I mean. This is the one that we went through at our retreat. This has changed since the retreat and may change before the final budget presentation. You just never know. But at this point, this is the latest and greatest of all that we know. It did incorporate some of your guys' suggestions during the retreat. Some things came up after the retreat that we incorporated too. So this lists everything that we anticipate spending. The next page is where we should probably just walk through how this works. Under tab 2, this is the one that's kind of confusing. To me, it's like an old hat, but it's the first time you guys are seeing it, so I'll take a little time. So let's just take, let's go down to number, I'd say one that crosses all years would be number 10, which is the Harbor Heights Parkland improvements. So if we go across on number 10, and I'm just going to show you how the spreadsheet works, not really describe anything other than that. As you go across, the first, after the description, you have the total funds requested. That's the total funds over 6 years. Then you go to the next line, or next column, which is fiscal year 19 budget request. So that's a budget request for 19. When you go into 2020, there's a budget request. 2021, 2022, 23, and 24. Then if you go all the way over to where the funding's coming from, grants, donations, and others is the column that the 450 is in, and then the next column is specialty funds. And how the description of specialty funds would be back on page 3, so the third page in, number 10, follow it across, and I'll wait till you get there. So that the funding, specialty funding that'll go into this project is park impact fees, neighborhood park impact fees, REIT 1 and REIT 2. That makes up the 1925. So that's how you read this. So you start with the description and year it's going to happen. You look at the main funding, and then you look at the specialty funding. Then you can tell how this works. And then if you want to go into the actual project description, it's also repeated there. So will that kind of orient you a little bit on how we, okay. At the top of the pages, when we go into section 3, there's a total above the specialty funds. So when you go over, it starts at 101 streets. Above there, it says estimated fund balance, estimated revenue. So any of the specialty funds that don't...
Tricia, you said page 3 in that section? Or?
Section 3, page 1, sorry. Tab 3, yep. Sorry. Yep. So if you go to the very top of the spreadsheet, above the projects, there's a estimated fund balance and estimated revenue. So what I've done is I've taken where we currently stand in fiscal year 18 at the end, the estimated amount, what we anticipate receiving, and then we go to the bottom to see what's estimated left after 19, and we do that all the way through after 20, 21. So you can see how we've tried to plan around the revenue receipts in our use of those funds. And those funds don't have any payroll or operating expenses, they're just strictly for projects. So it should be very easy to follow. The estimates that are being made are the estimated revenues. So if the revenues change, hopefully they go up, they go down, that might change our plan.
So one question,
sure.
The beginning fund balance and then the estimated revenue, is that just for
That
29, just for 1 year?
Yep, the estimated revenues are for 1 year, and then the ending fund balance at the very bottom is after use of that for that year's projects. And then when you go into the next page, I update the estimated beginning fund balance with that. It pulls from the previous page, and then I put in the estimated revenues. Does that make sense to everybody? Yes?
Give me the years, those are sequential years from the estimated fund balance. Each of those columns represents a year,
Estimated fund balance is what it starts the year at,
right?
and then the estimated revenue is the estimated revenue for that year. Then when you go to
2019.
Top
for-
left
The
hand
first
corner.
page is
left hand corner.
FY 2019.
Okay.
That whole page is.
Okay, that's all.
Yep, 2019. And then we carry that into 2020, so the beginning fund balance is different, the estimated revenue changes, and then the bottom number changes.
Okay. I got it.
The very right-hand side, Beth, up there. Is everybody following that? I know it's kind of complicated, but it ultimately, hopefully, will help make a complicated subject a little less complicated. So I think our best way to approach this is to go year by year and go through the projects and see if you guys have questions. I don't know if you want us to read them one by one, or if you would like to look at 19. How would you like me to present it to you? Because I don't want to.
Just a quick question on that. So for example, fiscal year 2019, 101 streets, they don't have a beginning or an ending fund balance?
No, because that has operations, and that is hard to estimate. I don't know what projects that we didn't finish this year, and what payroll changes may happen. So if I estimate that, it wouldn't be good. But I haven't over committed based on what our fund balances are.
Okay.
And general fund's the same way.
Yes, general fund is also the same way. General fund is a decision that will be made when we look at the general fund. It's a one-time cost, so we tried to minimize that as much as we could. A couple highlights. When you first saw this, the vehicle exhaust system for fire, we had $115,000 all coming out of general fund, but we were able to, Jessica and I were able to get a hold of MRSC and found out that fire has an exemption from other city buildings that you can use REIT 1 or REIT 2 for that. So we were able to put $100,000 worth of the cost into REIT 1 and REIT 2 and minimize the commitment from the general fund. So it's allowing a safety feature to happen at a minimal cost to general fund. Same thing with all the parks. Most all of the parks are either being paid for via the park impact fees or REIT 1 or REIT 2 or grants and donations. So we tried really hard to look at everything that we could to minimize the commitment out of general fund, because that's the most fund that has the most commitments to it. So that's kind of our approach. We were able to cut this down significantly from the last time you saw it from general fund. So how would you guys like us to go through this? Would you like us to go through section by section and have the department heads or the people responsible talk about their section?
That would give us,
Do we have money for everything?
General fund's the only up in the air thing, and that will be determined when we go through the general fund working budget.
I mean, I
But
would just for me, I don't know that we need to spend a ton of time if it's not a hard decision that has to be made going through that, if there's funding for it.
We've
Unless
tried to
there's
make sure there's funding for the
a
things we've
highlight
asked
that
for.
the departments want to hit on, but let's
Yeah.
spend our time where it's the toughest.
Yeah. Or the most complicated.
Right.
If there's projects in here you want more explanation on, or how they're gonna work, I mean, we're happy to go through anything you'd like us to.
Can you highlight the new projects that were added since the
Yep, I can do that.
budget workshop, because that's the big change here.
Sure.
Did you, Mayor Pro Tem, do that?
I was just say, it's nice to have some background, kind of a general, what they're looking at, which direction they would like to go in each department. I mean, we've heard a little bit, but maybe just kind of
Okay.
a nice overview, sort of.
All right. So do you want me to start with the new ones we've added, or do you want to just, okay. So,
Member, did you have a question?
I do. You probably already mentioned this, but FY19 CIP is a capital improvement fund. Is that what that is?
yeah, that's the CIP that you're going to,
That's the request.
the request is the budget request. The CIP is items that actually are going to show up in the CIP because they're above 50,000. There's some requests in here that are under 50,000 and don't qualify for the CIP comprehensive plan.
Right. But in this one, this is a request without a funded item,
Which one?
without being funded. The items listed in FY19 CIP?
No, they're actually
They
the one.
are all funded?
Yep, they're all funded.
Okay.
Yeah, this
I
is.
see where they are. But
Yeah, the difference is the CIP is what is going to show up in this comprehensive plan, the CIP that CAC and Steve do.
Yeah.
And maybe Steve can explain this better. Am I saying it correctly? Go ahead.
You're doing fine. The distinction, the big distinction is that when the council approves the budget, you'll be approving the 2-year budget. The 6-year capital improvement plan, we have an obligation under the state law to show our best estimate of how we're going to fund all 6 years.
Okay.
And so this time, Tricia and her team have gone the extra step, and really, I think it's a pretty solid plan for the 6 years based upon the projections. So if you're looking at page 1 of handout 1,
I'm looking at, yeah,
so
page
where
1.
it says 2021, 2022, 23, 20, and 24 capital improvement plan, I think that's just the distinction to show that those 4 years aren't part of your approved budget, but it's our look forward, try to figure out how we make all of this work outside of the 2-year budget window.
Okay.
And then, as Patricia said, those things which are less than $50,000 will not qualify for inclusion in the capital improvement plan.
Okay, so the answer is, all the funds are not currently in place or in the bank right now under CIP. They're forecasted to be funded by some means.
I don't know if we can say that, because depending upon the funding source and the project, there may actually be funding available, but you just won't be approving it until we get to the
Okay.
budget for 2021 and 2022.
Okay.
So 2019 and 2020, though, we will be coming back to council with a request to fund 2019 and 2020 for these projects. Or if you don't like them, a difference, but yeah.
And my guess is that 2 years from now, we're gonna have different priorities, and some projects are gonna go away, and some are gonna become more, new projects will come about. So there'll be some adjustment there. It's just like Steve was saying, it's our best guess right now. Long term is what we look at.
And that's what we've done in the past.
Well, the
We've done
difference, yeah, and the difference I did this year is I wanted to solidify what funds we had in the bank and projections we had. Can we really afford, based on what we know today, out 6 years for these projects? Or are we just sticking a pie in the sky? And this made me feel very good. 2024 is a little, there's a few things there that we'll have to see, but the majority of it, everything else to me, I can see funded
And
today.
And that's a level of detail that heretofore we've not had as we've looked at the CIP.
Okay, so the ones that have been added, and it'd probably be better to go back to the summary sheet at the beginning.
Section 2?
Yeah, section 2. Yeah, so we added
What page are you?
section 2,
First page?
first page.
Okay.
So if we look up here, I don't believe we had the White House roofing replacement in there, or did we? I think we added that after our conversation with council, didn't we?
Well, we've had it since the start of this process. I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Okay. But it's out in it's out in 2021, so that one's the same. Hold on. The HVAC replacement, that's been there all along. We moved the West Side Fire Station out to 2024. It was in 2021. Kathy, chime in anytime I'm missing something here. There's something, shoreline restoration, is that the one that we added in after?
Yes, that's the one we added after. That's from Midway to Regatta.
Line 22.
That's going to be more of a long-term project because we keep having erosion along the bank that could undermine the roadway. So we're going to have to spend some time studying and permitting and then constructing.
We're going to do some small repairs, right?
Yes, we've got money to do some small repairs in 19.
Does that tie in any way with the soft armoring stuff the county wants to do from the marina over or somewhere over there like Regatta-ish? Is the county doing something?
The county's doing something, but it wouldn't be the same project. We're trying to protect the infrastructure of the roadway, sidewalk, sewer lines,
CV project.
utilities.
You're going to be answering a lot of questions. Nope. Hot seats right there.
They're not the same project, but it's pretty easy to envision that there could be a connection between them, particularly depending upon what we might learn through, if we're successful in getting our marina projects funded, we might learn something through the soft armoring on the beach restoration over there that could apply to this piece. I also think that it might be possible for us to explore utilizing that same funding source and displacing some of our own funds here, but that would be an evolving thing.
And then under the senior center, we added rebranding signage. That was just added.
So, could I stop you for a moment?
Sure.
You were talking about that shoreline restoration, and that's a good example of the proprietary money.
Mm-hmm.
And so we could go back to that. Is it the last page in that section to determine where that proprietary?
Yeah, it's actually on the third page back. Actually, the first page starts. So if you start on the first page, you see that 1,050 is coming out of proprietary and 350 is coming out of specialty funds. And then if you go to page 3, it shows that the 350 is coming out of streets. So streets is paying for part of it, but we're also sharing it the rest amongst the proprietary funds. And then it describes exactly how that split works. If you go to the sheet here, in here.
So, question.
Sure.
On that, I thought I had handled it, because you're talking in thousands.
Yes,
I am still saying thousands, sorry.
Yeah.
I hate to say millions, it just hurts.
It's all good. So, on that example, so line 22, we see it. If we come back to the proprietary, the third page, I see 350 coming out of streets, but where does the other million?
Okay. So if you go to this, and we did not number these, we will work on that, sorry. So if you go back to Fund 101, it's about, well, probably 22 pages back.
What tab are you on now?
The last tab,
Oh, yeah.
and we're looking for one of these sheets.
But even before that, wouldn't we have seen it reflected here?
It's reflected as proprietary, but it doesn't break out which proprietary that means. So if you go back to the last page, proprietary means water, sewer, garbage.
Right.
Yeah. So if you go to this sheet right here, it shows you exactly how the proprietary is going to be split out. So water, street's going to pay $350, water's going to pay $350, wastewater's going to pay $350, and storm drain operations will pay $350. So when you are reviewing this after the meeting, it's good to have.
There, on 101. Oh.
So the hard to understand part, I think, is the capital improvement expenditures. I'm still on line 22.
Uh-huh.
It shows 300,000 in 21, 300,000 in 22.
Yeah, so if you look at 19, we have 100,000 showing that we're gonna spend. The first page there mixes everything together. The way to get it year by year is to go to the third tab and look at each year of funding. The one on section 2 is the sum total of all the years and all of the funding streams. If you look at each year, it tells you how much is gonna be spent each year. The total spending is $1,004,000, 100,000 in 19, 20 is 100, 21's 300, 22 is, yeah, just,
I got that.
okay.
But where did you say it shows that so much comes out of streets?
So if you go to the summary one, which is the second tab, and this is good because this kind of gives you an overall picture of how this works. So go down to line 22.
Right.
And you see the $1,004,000 is the total for the project, and each year it shows how much spending is going to occur. Then you go over into the section, next section, and you go to proprietary. It shows 1,050. $1,050,000. Thank you. Just pick me when I do that. 350,000 under specialty funds. Then you go back to the third page, which is an extension. So it's like the first page and the third page should just be side by side, right? The third page is the actual detail of the specialty funds. So you go to number 22, line 22 on the third page. Have you found that?
Well, I think so. That's for 1920, biennial budget, page 3.
This is actually 19 through 24.
Are we still on tab 2?
Yep.
Yeah, but it only
Yep.
shows 350.
It shows,
350,000.
and that is under the specialty funds, and that is under 101. So that one plus, so that one goes back to page 1 as the specialty funds total, so those tie.
Ooh, wait a minute.
Here, I'll show you.
Look.
It's easier to just.
I'm lost. Much easier.
This shows the full total. This shows how it's broke out between the years.
Got it.
Shows this is proprietary, and this is the specialty fund of 350. So you wonder, what is that specialty fund?
Okay.
It's that one.
Okay.
And that's the 350,
Now, where do we get the rest of it? And that was Joel's.
right here. The rest of it's all here.
But it comes out of what?
Every year. So all of these, and so if you want to know what comes out out of the total, you go back to tab 5
Okay.
or 4, 3 or 4, which one is it? 5.
Okay.
And then you go to 22 pages back.
Okay, that's the part.
Yeah, and that was the part that was hard. We didn't number this, which we should have. So right here shows each year and how the different funding streams work.
Okay.
Yes, that's what I'm not in the sector.
So question, I think the mayor and I are on the same page, I'm trying to get a handle. So I understand the proprietary, the specialty funds and the follow-up to that. That, if we're on that same line item 22, midway to regatta, shoreline restoration, the $1,050,000, is that, it's not the previous years just to the left of that?
Nope.
Where's that?
That's the total funding stream from, okay, so to the left of, okay, right here, if you look at 2019 through 2024 on the left here.
Correct.
Okay, this is listing how it's being spent each year.
Okay.
Okay, then when you go to the other side, you're no longer looking at years, you're looking at total spent.
Right.
So the total spending is $1,004,000. $1,050,000 is coming out of proprietary, and $350,000 is coming out of specialty or streets. When you go back to specialty, you see that it's streets.
Okay. And so if we want to see the proprietary, we go back to the last tab and find the detail.
Yep.
Got it.
Yeah. It's a little convoluted, but it all does tie together. Right. Otherwise, I don't know how we could have fit it on another spreadsheet, maybe.
No,
sure.
we'll just have to add numbered.
Yeah, and this is informational. It'll all show up in funds in the actual budget for Eden. It'll be in the right funds, but this is just a way for you guys to know what's happening in our thought process on how we're going to fund it.
Could I ask one other question? Is
Yeah.
it just a coincidence that it's on page 22 of the proprietary? You didn't number these pages.
No,
on tab 5.
the pages are all in the same order as the
So-
projects, so it should be the 22nd page, because it should be in the same
Okay.
order.
Well, that'll simplify it then.
But we will number them
Okay,
for the final budget document.
okay.
This is really helpful down here to see how the money's broken down and funded. That really, your team did.
We tried,
All the
the whole
departments
team,
did an
everybody worked together. Jessica
Yeah.
brought it all together. And, yeah, so we got to a document that I think is helpful. So are we good with the summary page and ready to move on to the third tab?
I think there's still a couple projects that were added.
Okay, please.
Under the sewer fund, we added the decommissioning of our force main from City Beach out to the
And that'd be
seaplane
page
buil-
2 of the
yeah.
summary sheet.
Seaplane based lagoons.
It's
It's under sewer.
tab 2, second page.
Yeah.
And it's number 62.
Yeah, 62, and then we also added the sewer lagoon outfall repair, which is one of the things that we have to wrap up with the Navy to be finally completed with that agreement. So that's number 63.
Jessica, do you want to flip that to 19 so then we can see the 19 detail? Okay, so we're on tab 3 now. Thanks, Kathy.
Before you just move on.
Sure.
On these projections that go out to FY '24, what what percentage escalator did you factor in
For the projects themselves,
for the cost estimates going that far out?
that would be Public Works and departments. I didn't come up with any of the cost. I relied on the department. So Kathy, I'm assuming you guys used escalators?
Yeah, we were pulling things from our comp plans and the years that those had been in there. Are you thinking in terms of the revenues?
Well, I'm thinking in terms of the projected cost going forward. It's not that accurate to forecast out 5 years. You have to have some kind of, obviously, an escalator in there. You use 3%, 2%, 6%? What did you use to get to your final number?
3%.
And they will be adjusted every year that Steve does his CIP.
Okay.
So in 19, when the CIP is done, you won't see the budget document, but you'll see the CIP document, and they'll have updated that. Then in 2021, when we come back with a budget, we'll have updated those numbers going out again.
So that's 3% each year, 3% on top of the previous year, 3 on top of the previous year.
It's a good question for guessing.
I understand that. It's
So we don't know the actual cost until we go out and bid or
Until we get design.
buy it.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
was
these are
only
just very high-level planning.
confirming that you had
estimates.
an escalator worked into the package.
And that's why we're only asking council to approve the 2-year budget totals. The rest of it is all
Right.
part of our plan that definitely has the potential to change.
But this gives us the vision. Usually we just work 2 years, done. Oh, wow, look at this, the next year. So this really is a lot of forethought and vision by each and every department. So thank you very much, because you're right. We just do 2 years and it's wham bam over. Yet Steve has the 6-year list and sometimes a 20-year list, and Kathy can have some of the same thing. But this is nice that it is laid out, and we realize you can swap around, discard, add a new one, but it's nice to have pointed out that like 62 and 63 have been added on, you know, and then the other, so this is nice that you've shown the added on project. So thank you very, very much.
Just going through these, Mr. Sublet, 2020 possible busy year for you.
Yes.
Looking at this, is that you've got some healthy grant donation or other? How confident are we that we'll get that stuff?
We will be doing a feasibility study in 19. It'll answer that question, whether it's feasible to do those projects or not to do those projects. It all starts with the feasibility.
Can I add on to that answer? So those are the 3 grants that we've been pursuing for the last 3 or 4 years with the county. We're, I think, led to believe that if the feasibility study comes out well, then funding is likely to follow along as well.
Okay.
Of course, it's not over till it's over, as they say, but that's why the first part of the process was the feasibility study, using those funds and administered by those staffs.
Okay, so if we're ready to go to section 3, I'm going to let the people that know talk about the sections as Beth had requested. So, police flooring, carpet, and tile replacement.
You bet.
Keep going.
So I don't have a ton to say on it, other than, we did have an allocated budget for that in the last cycle. We've used that for the fencing that's you see around the back of our department. So we still do have a need to do carpeting, and $40,000 is the estimated amount. Putting it in throughout our department as best we can based on that amount. And that's projected for the coming year to do that. If you haven't been in a department, you can see why we need to do that. We'll do offices last week. Those are satisfactory if we need to keep them. If we're looking at doing some rubberized flooring in like the squad room for more durability. And so that's what that money's for. The White House is projected, I think, at 2 years.
That one's in
2021?
Yep, 3 years.
And I think I indicated this last time we talked, we may end up having to do some patching prior to that. Really, there's just one little section on an overhang that has some wind-blown tiles that we may end up having to patch. But we have no leakage in there right now, so we believe we'll be okay up until 2021. But the roofing does need to be replaced, and that's an estimated value to do that. Simple 3-tab is I think what we're looking at. It's called something else, but that's what I call it, 3-tab. Yes, sir.
Your proposal has 3-tab and metal. 3-tab is about half the price of metal, maybe even greater than that.
I don't have that in front of me, but the metal would only just be the trim. There's no need to put a metal roof on there that I'm aware of.
So we're not talking about metal. It's
No,
just flashing.
Rich, I don't think we ever talked about metal, did we? Or
We had some price quotes on metal too.
okay.
But I would just, the narrative says 3-tab or metal.
Yeah, and I think with that amount of money looking forward in 2 years, I think it's going to be the 3-tab. And we've cut some trees away since then too. The trees were causing some deterioration. Parks has come in there and cut the trees. I think we'll be just fine with the 3-tab. And then the last one is, I think actually was put in by Parks, but that's $7,500 for landscaping. So we have ivy just going crazy back there, and some other stuff which, the ivy is not tearing up the pavement, but we're looking at trees and we're looking at the ivy. We're looking at just, I think Hank says it's not been done for, I don't know how many years. So that was put in there to take care of some of that landscaping issues around it. That's it.
Any questions for the chief? Okay, you're off on the hot seat.
All right.
I like the way you've laid this out. If we can go with tab 5 and agree about it, yeah. Really nice.
So the next one is fire. Chief Merrill?
I'm going to use Kevin's seat because it's safe.
We're working with him. Welcome, Chief.
So we've talked before about the exhaust system. As you probably remember, when we built the station, it was a passive exhaust system. So when the bay doors open, we hope we had some air that flowed through to push the exhaust out. At the same time, as long as those doors were open, we were losing heat, so it was not being efficient. We had estimated about $115,000. We've asked for this for the last 4 budget cycles, and it's been rejected the last 4 budget cycles. We've shown that there is a safety and a health issue with not having the exhaust system in there because of the byproducts of diesel combustion, both in the health and welfare of our firefighters as well as the public in general when they come in to visit. As Patricia said, we found out that we could put some money from REIT into that in the tune of $100,000, so we're down to about $15,000, give or take a little bit. We did get some quotes, anywhere from a low of $54,000 to a system that we really would not look at because it strictly is mounted on the apparatus and doesn't fully exhaust the building. So that's something we need to take a look at, and to make our new heating system that we have to put into the truck bay this year more efficient. You're going to find on our next request is the HVAC system. It is now 26 years old. The HVAC in the apparatus bay has failed completely, which means we have no heat in that bay anymore. So far, the 2 resident units have shorted out. We've had electrical fires inside of them. We've had furnaces that have failed. We've had the metal fail, the bearings have failed, and one of the motors fell out of the heater one day, all in the last year and a half. So we're looking to replace the other 8 systems over the next 4 years. At about $25,000. Originally, when we projected the cost, it was $200,000 due to the whole system. After we did some more research, we got it down to about $25,000 per year, amortized over the next 4. But here's the good and the bad. I can guarantee you absolutely 100%, no matter which 2 we replace in the next year, something else is going to break on the one that we didn't replace. So I'm taking bets right now and see how well we can fund that. But we are going to replace the 2 in the apparatus bay now because they have totally failed. And then in 19 we'll replace 2, in 20 we'll replace 2, 21 we'll replace 2, and 22 we'll replace the last 2 at $25,000 per year. Yes, Beth.
So when you're trying to get quotes, is this through what Sandra uses, the state funding? You go through and use their power in buying, or not, or it has to be something completely different?
We use local contractors, Trico, Handy Seating, Barron Heating, contractors that we've used in the past.
Okay. Thank you.
So that's...
This might be a Patricia question. Any reason we can't use REIT?
For the equipment, because it's not health and safety, I think.
I believe with REIT, it has to qualify under the capital improvement plan, and they have a thing about machinery and equipment that you cannot use. But that's why I specifically asked about the vehicle exhaust system, because it's an addition to the facility, so maybe I can ask, and I could reach out to MRSC to see if HVAC system.
Then maybe we could step it up a little bit.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good question, only because you just don't need that to cool off when you're too hot. You need it to stay warm if it's too cold too. So
yeah, we're happy to look at for
okay,
that.
thanks.
Did you guys have sweatshirts and fire jackets?
I'll make you a deal.
Okay.
And then the final year, if you want to talk about that, so you don't have to come back.
In 2024?
Yep.
As you all know, we've been looking at the fire station on that west side for quite a while. We weren't sure when to put it in. We had a meeting here a while back and moved it out to 2024 as the far end of when that station goes in. Of course, I'll be asking for it more to try to move it forward, you know me, but that's where we've ended up putting is into 2024. But as we all know, someday it's got to happen, just when. So, I was all prepared when I was going to win the mega bucks just to buy it and put it in and be done with it.
That'd be great.
Yeah. So.
Memorial.
It was going to be. Now you notice I didn't do it with the sewer treatment plant because.
He's still trying.
Yeah, he's still alive.
Well, let's not make it memorial. Not memorial yet, Joel. I mean, I'm still living.
Okay, any other questions for fire?
Thank you, Ray.
Okay,
Thanks, Ray.
Nice find, but interpretation, because they change all of that.
I know.
They don't send you out a notice and say, hey, guess what, you can use this now. So.
Yeah, we have been definitely one of their best customers this last few months. Asking lots of
If I
questions.
need testimony on the board, I can say, hey, you can call this department and talk to finance, and they'll give you great stories.
Yeah,
so.
we've got all the emails, right?
Okay.
Right, Jessica?
Super.
So the next section is parks, and that would fall under Kathy.
So the first one, the Windjammer Park playground equipment, that's the Bailey's playground that Hank talked with you about last week. We're hoping to get about $15,000 in donations along with $45,000 of city funds for that. Neil Tower, we own that. That's over by the roller barn. And it's a historical structure. It's in need of some renovation and repairs to keep it in good shape. Shadow Glen and Lewick Park, those are older existing playgrounds, and the playground equipment is beyond its useful life, so we will be replacing that playground equipment. And Harbor Heights land and improvements, that's the property that we would like to purchase for the future regional park on that. And then the Portland Loos, that's for Flintstone. We did receive the money from Island Transit, and we've placed our order with Portland Loo, but they're not going to be ready for delivery until March or April. So we've pushed it off into FY19.
Question on that, Mayor.
Oh, yes.
Will we have the slabs and the underground all in place before the Portland Loos come?
Yes, we will have a project to do the demo and have everything ready for them before they get here.
Slab in place, sewer, water, hookup,
Yes.
power, everything is ready to plug in.
Yes.
So on parks,
Councilor Strabady.
I'm sorry.
Do we have any, for the Harbor Heights stuff, do we have any kind of an option? As much as we talk about this, we fairly secure ability to procure the land and the price?
We have not secured an option on it. We have been in active discussions though with the property owner, the property owner's representative. It's a group of people that own the property, and they are very interested. So I don't know if you want to add to that.
We'll be bringing it to council in the near future
Okay.
for future discussion on the purchasing.
Okay.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
And there's no conflict with the gun club at the inn as far as their activities and kids? Okay.
No.
Just, I've had a few calls on that, so I just need to have it out there. Thank you.
So Kathy,
Councilor Lomberg.
I'm so sorry.
One other quick question here. We obviously don't capitalize playground equipment for replacement.
No, we have not in the past.
We just don't have a capitalization schedule on that like we have with vehicles?
No. We have not in the past.
It's too, I'm not going to say nickel dime, but it's too much of a small, unpredictable.
Yeah, it's never been brought up, and it is general fund money. Patricia's found a way for us to use REIT for these playground equipment, but in the past we've tried to get it through the general fund, and there just has not been enough available resource to actually start setting money aside for replacement in that fund.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Since Windjammer Park is, going to be the huge attraction, wouldn't it be wise to maybe just, at least for this park, to look at replacement, or, you get the guarantees of what we're buying, you kind of figure it. Sanders had a software she invented, I think, to figure that kind of stuff out. But with as much money and the highlight, not that we don't care about neighborhood parks, but when you're doing something like this one and Fort Nugent and the new one, that maybe at least for those parks, we might want to have some type of replacement fund, just so that it never gets dragged down because we've got something in reserve.
I think there's a bigger discussion about setting money aside for city facilities.
Okay.
We have not had any kind of a reserve fund, or I don't know if you call it a sinking fund, for, say, for example, the HVAC here at City Hall. We don't have any money set aside, or we haven't been contributing to a replacement fund for any of that. So I think we could look at the parks as part of that overall facility planning.
Yeah.
That would be my recommendation.
So this year, what you'll see is we're breaking apart 502 fund into 502 being equipment and vehicles. 505 will be tech, hardware and software, and then we'll have a facility fund, and I don't remember that number. Jessica probably has it. Okay, me either. But it'll be moving. There's a few items that are in the equipment fund that really we want to move into the facilities fund, and so that will be something that you will see in the final budget. It'll show each one of those different groupings of replacement. But like Kathy said, I think it's a bigger discussion because we also have fire vehicles that don't have a replacement on them currently. So there's a lot of different things that you as a council, depending on competing priorities for the funds, can help us make long-term decisions. My goal this year was just to get it identified and the funds broken apart so it was transparent, and then when that discussion starts will be up to the mayor and Blaine, city administrator. So, but yeah, that's the hope, that we have some kind of a plan.
There was an analysis done through state general offices or something. Yeah, I think so. They had come out and taken a look at all of our different facilities and estimated the life of different, the roof, the HVAC, those kinds of things, and made some recommendations as to starting to put aside money for eventual replacement of those items. So we have a report. I know Patricia has it. I think we gave a copy to Blaine as well.
Councilor Holmberg, I think you
Can I just add one little thing? So when you talk about replacement stuff, we're on the hook for the library, the College City Library, right? Because we just replaced some kind of heating, HVAC.
Certain parts of the library we are.
Okay,
Yeah.
and is that a separate fund
Understood.
for that one?
The library wasn't as steady
Okay.
to be put in there, yes. But yeah, that's a unique arrangement with them. We maintain about 43% of that building on certain things.
Right.
And so it's kind of a unique contract with that one. But yes, the heating was our
Well, I'm just thinking, we're talking, you know, HVAC here, and we haven't done
Yes.
anything to this building, and my brain goes, ooh, library, we just had to replace that and divvy it up. So it kind of all relates, and I'm sure your minds work a lot more in detail than mine, but the red flag went up and went, wait a minute, this is over here, and this is here, and this is there. So I'll depend on you guys, but somehow get it all. Thank you.
Councilor Holmberg.
When are we gonna have that discussion?
Well, I hope we get through the budget first, because I think having that discussion,
Right, okay.
and then make that something for.
I think it's important to have that discussion and have a strategy down, because we really have, in essence, these hidden costs that are not being addressed, and we're going forward, and it looks like we have plenty of capital and bonding capacity to do things forward without having the backside kind of like a stack of entitlements in there. And that's a false report about our financial statement when we're not addressing the replacement costs of things that have a predictable life cycle to them. I guess I'm preaching to the choir.
Yeah, I think it's been that way.
Yeah.
We've kicked the can down the road for a number of years, but I think we hear what you're saying. I do believe we need to get through this budget cycle, but I think we should have the conversation as soon after.
I think, yeah, part of it is identifying like Rich is the one we're going to be relying heavily on, identifying our biggest risks, our fires, our smoke, and our embers, you know, which ones we have to really look at first, second, and third, and then figure out how we can set something up to plan for that.
How long ago was that study, do you think?
It was just completed the first part of the year.
Okay.
We were going through the draft on it and stuff, and just got finally got it final.
Okay, thanks. Okay.
So, Kathy, do you want to go into 2020 on the parks too, or do you want to wait till we get to 2020? What would you prefer?
I'd stay on
Let's
this
just stay on
page.
this
Let's just
page.
do 19.
Let's go. Okay, next, Kathy.
Okay, so the next is streets. We've got a couple of small pieces of equipment, salt brine for snow and ice, and battery backup for one of our, Rich is trying to do battery backup for one signal light a year. And then we've got the Waterfront trail repair. That's a federally funded project, 100% grant funded. That is well on its way to being ready to go to get bids and construction in 2019. The SR20 in Fakima, that is that access road off of our property out there, the old Boyer property where we have the Centennial Oak Grove. The the commercial properties out there can't access the highway anymore because of traffic volumes and those kinds of things. Traffic has changed over the years. So this would allow access through the back of our property to the commercial properties out there. That's a pretty high priority for us, I think. The asphalt overlays, we haven't done any for a couple of years, so we're proposing a large amount in 2019. The numbers moving forward don't include any revenues, as far as I know, Patricia, for the revenues that will come from the TBD.
No, we don't have anything listed here.
So
that will adjust.
Yeah, that will adjust. And the shoreline restoration, we talked about that. And Northeast 7th, we've got some funding for preliminary design and preliminary engineering. That's grant funding over the next couple of years. So we've got a small, about 13.5%, 13.7%. 13.5% match on that. And that's it for streets.
Any questions for Kathy on that?
Maybe, so I'm going to, sorry.
Go ahead.
The 400,000 then without any of the TBD funds moving forward, if I go back to this detail, we're grabbing that from
Streets operating, so that's gas tax and Capron, and then REIT.
little REIT 1 and REIT 2,
Yeah.
okay. So that's interesting, we'll get to lay down some pavement. Hopefully, a lot of pavement if we get the TBD going.
Yeah, the smell of asphalt makes me really happy.
It's very, not sexy, but it's exciting.
And
I
this
love the smell of asphalt.
Kathy, this is from, we just had that study, the 71 miles, and they did, you know, this gets an A, this gets a B, this gets a C, and this is like double F kind of, okay.
Yeah, so we will use that payment management rating analysis to help us prioritize how we spend that money.
Thank you.
Councilor Romberg?
But that's different than LOS, where she was referring to level of service.
No,
We
she was-
had the study of the 71
About
miles.
about the quality.
Yes,
Right.
the
Quality.
payment management analysis.
Sorry,
Okay.
Thank you.
Senior Center rebranding the signs, Liz?
Sorry, I had one more on there. Sorry.
What's that?
One more on the, before we jump from streets. So the 7th, Northeast 7th,
Yes.
that's more of a 20, that's gotten moved out.
So can I take that one
Yeah,
for you?
you can.
So
Thank
the distribution of the costs across the 6 years is working with how we understand the RTPO funding cycle.
Okay.
And so that's why and also how we understand how this kind of project takes place. The preliminary work, right-of-way acquisition, preliminary engineering work, right-of-way acquisition starts up front. Then and we've got a gap in there for 2021 because typically those things can sort of slush over to the right. And then as we move into 2022, we move more into hard engineering. And we actually expect to see the majority of the funding coming through IRTPO in 2024, actually 2023 available for 2024 for construction. So we're timing this with how we understand the rest of the projects that we're competing against and how we understand our ability to handle the project internally.
Okay, and then one last one if I may then, because I may have misspoke. I don't think I misspoke in an earlier meeting. The Pioneer Way road diet, where is that money at in here? Is that in the 850?
Well, we've had some discussions internally, and we will do we're probably going to do a seal coat in 2019 and restripe it because Rich has indicated we have an old AC water line in that area, so before we overlay, we might want to replace that water line. We've got to look at some storm drainage, then, there's archaeology concerns, cultural resource concerns. So that's going to take a little bit more time to get all that designed and constructed. So we will push the the grind and overlay off so we can get some of these other the utility infrastructure addressed before we do that.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Oh, and the other piece to that is we know that Main Street has some ideas that they'd like to pursue for wayfinding signage, landscaping, monument features, and so this also gives us time to coordinate with them. So that if we're going to have a project, we're going to do a project and sort of do it all at one time.
And when is WSDOT planning the roundabout?
I can't remember. It's either 25, 6, or 7, somewhere in that range. And if I could go back to the Northeast 7th for just a moment, one of the things that does happen occasionally is that somebody else's project changes and they have a delay and they move out to the right, and then there's a call for projects in RTPO. So while this is how we see this laying out right now, if somebody else's project moves to the right, we may be able to move our stuff to the left. So if we come to you in 18 months and say we want to move it all to the left, that's the reason why.
And Steve is looking at the summary sheet under tab 2. It really clearly shows you how the spending goes out to 2024. The 2019 just shows what we plan to do in 19. So if you want to see the full picture, you'd want to go to that first sheet under tab 2. Okay.
Right. So for our senior center, the first one on the list is the roof replacement. It's the original roof when the building was built. So the roof is about 32 years old. We have had to do some patching and in order to stop some leaks from happening. So it is definitely time to start planning to replace the roof. There's 2 sections on the roof, as you'll see, a composite and then a flat metal section. And that flat metal section is the one that was leaking and has been repaired. So at this time, while it's not raining, it is not leaking, and we don't think that it will have any issues within the next couple of years. We talked about putting this on for the 1920 time frame, but looking at it, it looks like we can wait, and you know, if Rich had any input here, we would take that as far as the durability of the roof that we have right now. So this is the cost of roof replacement, and we're looking at doing it in 2024, it looks like. Then the rebranding signage, we've been working under the direction of some input by the mayor and others at our senior center to do some rebranding of the center in order to appeal to more of our population of those over the age of 50, and also use for the community. And so this specifically is for placement of a sign that allows us to, one, note who we are with our new name, but also we're hoping to do an LED sign so that we can list events and activities that are going on that are open to the community and to our members. Right now, anytime someone calls and asks where we are, they say, "Oh, the little building by the pool." Yes, because we don't have any really great signage and we're missed quite often. So that's something that we're looking to do there. Any questions?
Any questions?
Okay. The next area, so under the next section, which says 502 vehicles and equipment replacement, go back to tab 4 and go to page 2. And it shows in 2019 all of the equipment that's anticipated to be replaced. It's not just the ones that are in general fund, but it lists all of them. So that gives you the detail of the sum totals that say 502 replacement.
So where do we go? I'm sorry.
So go to tab 4,
Okay.
page 2.
Page 2. Sorry.
Nope, that's okay. And you'll in our colorful columns, which we love color. So the yellow column is the one that's 19. So it shows you all of the vehicle replacements under the 502 vehicle replacement fund.
So, under 2019, we have capitalized all of these vehicles, so we have $2,110,000. in place to be used at some point? Because that's going to be expended this year.
This has been collected to be expended. So
This
it's
year.
sitting there to be expended in 2019.
Okay. And that fund was created by our equipment rental or capitalization plan for all of this?
I don't know when the
Yes.
fund was created.
1996 or 97.
Okay.
Can I say how we get to these numbers real quick though? Just so
Sure.
it's not. So when we do these numbers, we actually sit down with every single city department and the department and their key people, and we go line by line through and the mechanics, excuse me, too. We go line by line and we all talk about every single piece, and we ask ourselves, can it be reused again somewhere else? Is there a need for a different piece of equipment? Will it last this long? Could we push it off? So we actually go through a whole process before we even get to finance, and we use a formula like this. So each fund has a vehicle. We know what's sitting in their contribution account. We've estimated the lifespan, not just because, or just not the staff. We've also talked to, like, we'll call CAT up and say, how long should a backhoe last based on these conditions? And then
hours
also,
used on the
correct, and plus what we know internally, because we're gonna use it differently, as you know, than Craig would use it. So we also, on the replacement needed, we call up all of the vendors and get those potential prices as well. And we do the 3% compounded escalation on it all the way out through the end of this year where we think it's going to be. And of course, this is evaluated every 2 years. Every 2 years we sit down and talk about it because of course it's changing all the time. But that's how we get to where we know, where we turned it over to finance to know what's going to be in 19, what's going to be in 20, blah, blah, blah. 19 also has carryover from this year. So for instance, pieces of equipment that that's coming forward, let's just say the tractor that we're bringing forward on November 7th, we've been told that it is coming in by the end of the year, but if it didn't, that money is going to be expended in the next year, even though it was budgeted this year. So that 19 looks a little bit higher for the solid waste trucks, 2 solid waste trucks that are being brought forward to council for potential approval in November as well. We know for sure that those won't be here for 9 to 10 months. So we automatically already budgeted them next year instead of this year where it's already currently sitting. So that's why that number is a little bit higher as well, because it's some carryover money too. So I just want to make sure you knew that there's a method to our madness of how we do it, and all the key players are involved, mechanics, staff, and myself, and then we go into the financial numbers at that point. So, okay.
Okay. Windjammer Park's the next one, Kathy?
So phase 1 of Windjammer Park will be completed next summer of 2019. What we're asking for is an additional $50,000 for like the 3rd quarter of 2019 to begin scoping and the public participation process for developing the plans for the next phase of the improvements to Windjammer. So that's what that $50,000 request is for.
Question. While you're on that item, this question's a little bit off course, but we talked about it a few years ago before we logged that property outside town.
Sleeper Pit.
Sleeper Road. What happened to that money? About $250,000. Where is that money?
I don't know where it was. I don't think it was separated when the income came in. Patricia, do you know?
I do know that there was 200 and some thousand sitting in a stability line for Windjammer Park. I don't know where that came from. And then we added another 600,000
Wait, say that
No,
again, please.
this is the logging money from Sleeper Pit, which was about $240,000.
Yeah.
We used some of that money to get the appraisal for the geotech and the appraisal.
For possibly selling the
Yes,
property.
to get the appraisal.
Yeah, I don't know. I just know what I saw when I got here, and we had money sitting in a line in 002. It wasn't stability fund money, but it was sit there segregated. It was 200 and some thousand. And then we added in sales tax in 16 and 17. And I don't know how much, and it was, I have a total that was transferred from general fund, but I don't know what all, I'd have to go looking to see if it was specifically logging money or not.
Okay.
or if it was other money.
Then we did the geotech to quantify the quality of the aggregate and the potential quantity of the aggregate.
Yes.
And then we were going to put it on the market to possibly sell, but we have a zoning issue potentially out there. I thought we were going to work on getting that zoning change from residential 5 acre.
The appraiser indicated that it would not raise the value of the property. It wouldn't be worth doing it. Am I saying that
What
right,
wouldn't
Steve?
be worth doing it?
Changing that zoning.
It wouldn't, so you can't mine it, there's not enough aggregate to mine it?
I don't know that that's what was said in the appraisal. It's just two different, each parcel has a different zoning on it.
Right, but the point that I'm making is it would seem like a logical purchaser of that property is someone who is using aggregate in that immediate area, and there is becoming a shortage of aggregate in that area.
So I think what we figured out on the staff side is that there really are only two options at this point for us. One is to sell it as is, and so that if anybody wants to pursue a zoning change, they would be the one who would be approaching the county for it. And the other option is for the city to continue to hold it. So the feedback that we got from the appraiser, both in his written materials, as well as the feedback that we got from Island County staff when we were exploring that issue with them, didn't lead us to believe that the city spending the time and the money to go through the rezoning process would be worth that effort. So it's really sort of two choices: sell it as is, or the city continues to hold it.
Okay, so not to get off track on our budget discussion here, but if we sold it as is, those funds could be earmarked for something that is for better public use than just growing brush out there, sitting there. And if we're not going to use it for aggregate, because I think in the early days there was some mining that went on out there that the city used it as a borrow pit. So if we're not going to use it, and we have that kind of capital tied up that could be used for, let's say, the purchase or expansion of a park, why wouldn't we consider doing that now and move along?
Yes.
Looks like
Why don't we continue this and put it on to we'll schedule this for a workshop item for discussion and have all the details. They've got a lot of good information on this
Okay, and I know we
property,
got to
and
move
I don't
this
know
conversation along. It just comes up. I always go back and look at what happened with money on that. On that, we decided to log it. We were going to use that for the future, and then the whole discussion just kind of came to a stop after we logged it.
I think we brought the appraisal forward at a workshop and had a discussion, but we didn't get any specific direction in which, how to proceed. And so Steve and I have talked with Blaine about that property.
Okay.
And it is on
A
the
good
list to
workshop discussion, Sleeper Road, disposition of the Sleeper Road project, and the capitalization of missing values on
Got
tree
it.
man.
Thank you, Mayor. I remember it was clearly marked for a community room. So, I just want to say thank you. I'm excited to see the.
I thought you said it was going to be for the windmill.
I'm excited to see this in the timeline and possibly 2021. I think it'll just be nice. I mean, I think that's going to be the regional destination park someday. So please keep the pedal to the metal on that. Thank you.
So the next section is the new purchases of equipment that are not on our equipment replacement, and we probably should either have Kathy and or Sandra discuss that.
Yeah, so the equipment rental repair shop needs a few things, a scan tool, a new tire changer, and some repairs, restoration to their floor. And engineering's asking for a new survey instrument. Facility truck, this is to replace a truck that has it's been kept in the fleet even though the replacement money was used to purchase another truck, but we haven't been putting money aside for this truck. It's the one that Tom Wade uses all the time. It's, gosh, that truck's been here for, it's like 26 years old or something. So that would be just an outright replacement through our budget. And then we're asking for another motor pool sedan. There are many times where every single motor pool vehicle we have in our fleet is out at conferences being used by staff, and so then there's nothing available, for example, for the engineering staff to use to go out in the field or those kinds of things. And then I think Sandra talked a little bit about the vehicle replacements for, you just talked about those, right? Yeah. Those are all in your tab 4.
Any questions? The security cameras would be where?
Security cameras.
Line 36.
Oh, line 36. I'm on a different one.
Yeah, we don't have any. We don't have any.
Yeah. Okay. Oh. What year are those? Those aren't in 19 though. Those must be in 20. Yeah. Oh. Oh, okay. I'm just going through 19. I'm sorry. Oh, they're flipping those? Okay. Okay.
Yes, Councilor Holmberg.
I misunderstand something here. Under the vehicle replacement, vehicle and equipment replacement, okay. The vehicle replacement is under tab 4, $2,110,000. Where is the other 500,000 come up? Approximately 500,000.
What 500,000 are you talking about?
Well, vehicle/equipment replacement, let's see, that's Fund 502. And then I go under tab 4. We just had this discussion about.
So each one of the vehicle replacements is in each one of the sections. So when it says 502 vehicle replacements, the list that you're looking at on page 2 behind tab 4 is all of them. Each one of those are referenced in the section that they apply to. So general fund had the first section that included fire, streets, parks, and police. Then we also have the motor pool, which is 502 replacements under the shop facility. Then you go down to water. It's the grayed out items are all the 502s. The total of the 502s add up to that.
Hold on. You're rolling way
Sorry.
too fast for me.
Sorry.
I'm back in the department fund for 502 annual replacement summary under tab 4. It's $2,110,000.
Yep.
That's all of the vehicles that get replaced this year. So under tab 2, tab whatever I have, tab 2.
Good question. I'm trying to follow you. Where did you get the $2 million at?
Under tab 4, the first page, tab 4, it's the 502 annual replacement summary, 2019 through 2024. But the first column, 2019, it comes to $2,110,000. Okay.
You're looking at the all years in the 2,000,006?
No, I'm just looking at 19. And
Very
then,
first page on tab 4.
so then I go back to the summary page for 2019-20. Under the column total requested funds under 502 vehicle and equipment, that's $2,695,000.
That's total requested from 19 through 24.
For just the motor pool.
Just the motor pool. That's
So
all 502.
If you go to this sheet, which is page 2, I guess under your tab 4, it tells you which departments. So motor pool is things.
Yeah, which page are you
This
on?
is tab 4, page 2.
Okay,
Tab 4.
okay.
The motor pool includes things like our big lift in the mechanics shop. That needs to be replaced. So that's $150,000. The cat backhoe is used by all public works divisions. So that is in the motor pool. That needs to be replaced. We're gonna build some covered storage. That's included in the motor pool. All divisions will benefit from that. So that's the $400,000. And all of those motor pool items are what we consider as the replacements or purchases in 502.
Okay.
Motor pool is included.
So that
in
is
502.
the sum of all of those other items on the
Yes.
page plus the 2,100,000 and some thousand on that page 1. That's how you got
Yeah.
to the 2,000,000.
Yeah, so if you take each department.
Yes. And
Has
add-
its
add-
own
add them up.
motor
Okay.
or equipment replacement line in it, and
Okay.
those all add up to that total. If that makes sense.
Okay, so we're still finishing up on the tire changer through the vehicle replacement, right? And now unless there's more questions about that, we're ready to go on then to proprietary funds.
I am.
Any other questions about?
I like tab 1.
Okay.
Or tab 3. I like tab 3. So this just messes me up. Okay, so we're going to talk about water.
You doing 19 or the summary sheet?
Well, I think Steve's
Okay.
telling me to use tab 2.
So we're using tab 2.
I think that's what you guys are all looking
I'm gonna go back and forth.
So you probably already touched on this. The column on first page of tab 2 that says spent to date.
That's any spending that occurred through September of 2018. That shows that these are ongoing projects.
So for instance, that top one, that Waterfront Trail Veterans Park, what we're saying is that of the 200,000, 219,000, we have spent 51,000.
Yep.
But we should be able to complete the project or do what we're trying to do with the 219 total.
And that's fully federally funded, the 219.
Right, in this case, okay.
Okay.
So we're going to go back to the tab 2. There's 2 ways to go through this. Some of you are going through the detailed, these one at a time as we go through. Others of you are looking on the list. This one combined, it matches the 2, so regardless of which way you go. So we're going to have Kathy start on water on the page 1 of tab 2.
Okay. Where I get confused is I'm just trying to focus on this budget.
I know.
No, so that's why I was using tab 3. So the Banta Road transmission mains, that's the one where the state's going to be doing the roundabout at Banta and SR20, and we've got to get our transmission mains out of the way. We will be submitting a preliminary design this week to WashDOT, so we're meeting their timeline, and that's moving forward. Crescent Harbor Regatta water main lowering, that's the county is the lead agency on that project, but we do have to lower our water line. It will be included in that construction project. The project has been delayed because there's some easement issues between the county, the city, and the Navy with Crescent Harbor and Regatta that are in the process of being resolved. We talked and council approved the painting of our transmission mains under Deception Pass Bridge as part of WashDOT's project. Every year we do some steel, and that should be AC, asphalt cement, or asbestos cement, water main replacements. Those are old water lines that need to be replaced. Rich is asking to purchase some ground penetrating radar equipment, which will help us locate our lines better, and security cameras at the North Reservoir. We're going to do an intertie between our 2 transmission mains out at the Rock Bridge near Deception Pass. That project, I think we're close to 90% design on that, so we will be constructing that in 2019. We've got to do some upgrades to our telemetry system, and the cross city transmission main, that's in years out. future years 21 through 23. And that project is really, it's not gonna do a lot for our system at this time until we experience some growth, but it would benefit the Navy quite a bit. Northeast Regatta pipeline replacement. Do you want me to go through each one of these water projects, or will I bore you to death?
Yes, Councilor Servatius.
Thank you. On the telemetry upgrades, they're out in 2019, 2020. Is there any, I mean, one of the early discussions we had with NOAANet and Anacortes, they got a lot of money just going through the water lines. Have we had that discussion here as to see if someone else, not someone else can entirely pay for it, but their whole fiber infrastructure project started with telemetry upgrades, and they got a ton of funding to run all that fiber through water lines because it was billed essentially as an upgrade to their telemetry system. I'm just curious.
Nobody's really talked to us about that.
Okay. Bug me, Blaine, and we'll have, yeah.
When we start getting into the broadband issue.
Okay.
Well, I'm not going to go through each and every one of these specific water projects. With the completion of the wastewater treatment plant, we will be shifting our focus to other utilities that have been kind of put on the back burner for the last couple of years. Our water system plan does have an extensive list of projects that need to be done, so that's why you see this long list of projects. And then you can see at the end of that, the 502 vehicle equipment replacements, that is specific to the water fund.
So a lot of those are proprietary funding, it looks like.
Yes, they will all be paid for through the water fund. Some of them will include what we call cumulative reserve, which is where system development fees go. So if there is a growth component to the project, we will use some system development fees as well as rate reserves that we've acquired through the rate structure.
Any questions about water?
Okay, the next one is wastewater. And as I mentioned earlier, we have, as part of our agreement with the Navy, when we leave the seaplane-based lagoons next late spring, early summer, we will be removing the biosolids from the lagoons. That will be a shared cost with the Navy based on percent flows. But it is one thing that we need to do to close out that agreement with the Navy. We've got some sewer line replacement, small projects spread out over the years, similar to what we do in water. A solid spreader, that's to purchase a spreader so that we can use the biosolids on city-owned properties. Horizontal lift, that is for the plant to help the staff get up to the higher reaches. Change light bulbs, those kinds of things. There are some areas where we do need to do some slip lining in the southeast part of town to prevent inflow and infiltration in our sewer lines. The water center, it's a shared project, but it's being shown as being expended out of the sewer fund. So this is developing and constructing and implementing all of the educational interpretive items in the interpretive center. We're calling that the water center. So we're going to develop all of that and have it all in place in 2019, and then hopefully 2020 we'll find some way to staff it. Yes.
And if you go to that page, it shows all the different funding streams that are coming through. On the detailed page, it'll show the different utilities that are adding to that total.
Kind of out of the box, but you said interpretive center, just throw something out. In Washington, D.C., a lot of the buildings, and I believe even in Olympia, the big interpretive center they have, why not docents? Get them trained, have them go through
That is
Instead of
part of
staff
our
time.
staffing plan, as well
Okay.
as trying to work with Skagit Valley College. In Mount Vernon, they have a 4-year program for environmental conservation, as well as they have a wastewater and water treatment 2-year programs. So we will be trying to find a way to partner with them. Their students need internships. So we are exploring all of those options for helping us to staff this in 2020. 2019 would be just getting everything in there, because we've got to have it designed and built if we're going to have displays or pods, or if we're going to use videos, we've got to locate those and purchase them, and those kinds of things. So that's 1920 is we're going to figure out how to staff it, but we are looking at all of those options.
Okay.
We talked earlier about the force main decommission. That's going from the existing diversion lift station on City Beach Street out to the lagoons. We will decommission that force main, and then as part of our agreement with the Navy, there is some minor outfall repairs that need to be done out at the seaplane-based lagoons. And we're working with the Navy. They need to decide what that outfall needs to look like for them. So we may just pay for the repairs that need to be done while they make all of the other modifications. But it doesn't make sense to pay for repairs now if they're going to have to remove them to modify the outfall based on their flow.
Any questions about sewer or wastewater?
Next one's pretty easy, solid waste. They just need some new trucks occasionally. That's it. Storm drain, the east outfall repair. We did the big outfall project over by the boat ramp. Now we've got some silting in, filling in of the outfall near the condos. That pipe needs to be extended a short distance, maybe 40 feet, and then we're going to put a duckbill outfall on it, which will keep the sand and logs from entering it. So that's what that improvement is. The west side outfall drainage pump. This is the draft of our stormwater comp plan talks about needing to pump water from that intersection near Beeksma and SR 20 during high tides, so that's what that is. We're looking at developing a detention pond at well 10, at the old well 10 site. That's where we've had some flooding in the vicinity of Southwest 6th. The Friend Marsh feasibility study, we've talked a little bit about that. Is there a way to increase the stormwater capacity in Friend Marsh? So that's what this study would look at. We've had some need to upgrade the storm drain lines in Woodby Avenue. We've had some surcharging there at times during heavy rains. And then over in the vicinity of Goldie Road, we've had on the books for a while a conveyance flow control and treatment project that we're going to analyze and hopefully construct something. That's it.
Any questions? Storm drain?
I think I'm done.
Now it is Steve and Chris's turn.
Hey, everybody. So we have a few projects that we want to complete within this budget cycle. The first one is to replace the fuel line that leads from underneath the hoist pier down to the fuel pumps. That would be both gas and diesel. Hope to do that in 2019. We want to start replacing the pile hoops that hold FDOC in place. They're the outer pile hoops that hold the breakwater in place. And we look to spread that over 5 years starting next year. We'd like to install some security cameras around the marina and the parking lot and in other key areas. That was a big thing that our tenants wanted. We had run a survey earlier this year and they overwhelmingly wanted that. We're also going to look at some marina management software in 2020. And then there's some grant projects that we've talked about before, the Stormwater Improvement Project, the shading reduction project and the beach armoring reduction. We touched on that a little bit today, but in 2019, there'll be a feasibility study to see if we can move forward with those projects. And then we put dredging on the radar as well for the year 2024. Those are really the projects we're looking at.
Councilor Holmberg.
A couple of questions here. I understand the situation with the FDUP file hoops.
Sure.
And you said that grants for the stormwater improvement, $1.2 million, and shading reduction, can we really count on those? They are going to come in, and will there be matching funds with those?
So everything depends upon the feasibility study in 2019. If the feasibility study proves that the project is worthy from the Salmon Recovery Funding Board, then the projects will move forward.
Where's the feasibility? The one down there, where's the feasibility?
The feasibility study is actually showing on previous tab, I believe it's.
It's the very, the summary sheet. It's the very, oh, that's the dredging feasibility study. Probably in your professional services in your budget, correct?
Right.
Yeah, so it's not showing as a project, it'll show as budget.
Right.
What's the tab number?
It's on the FY 2019. My packet's a little different than your guys's. So it's the FY 2019 project equipment plan. It shows the beach armoring reduction project at $75,000, which is the estimated cost of the feasibility study.
I'm still not.
Beach armoring reduction is the feasibility study?
Okay.
That's
right.
the first step, exactly.
That's the first step.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
And then FY20, $1.2 million for the stormwater and $1.25 million for the shading reductions. And that's all subject to getting the grant.
Yes, sir.
Based on the $75,000 for the study.
That's correct.
Okay, then the 925 is the marina dredging feasibility study, 200,000, and you expect it to be 925,000 to dredging. Okay, so one of the comments, complaints, issues that comes up constantly, and we've had this conversation over and over and over, and that's number one, the approach to the base and the marina with the stacking of cars in there at certain times of the day will push all the way back to past the college. Why don't we have that in this budget?
I think that's something the mayor's been talking to the base commander about.
It's been a point of discussion the first two meetings I've had with the base commander. The first meeting was I told him I wanted to potentially restudy the possibility of a 3-lane approach there. He said at the next meeting, the last meeting we had, he said, I'm doing a study on the seaplane base security. He said, I'm not sure we need the security there. So it's an ongoing discussion I'm having with him.
Yeah.
And I intend to try to fix that.
This discussion has actually gone on with about 2 previous COs on the base too, and it always goes to the study cycle of this thing.
So, Mr. Almer, if I may, I think part of the challenge is that staff, as we've talked about it with the Marina Advisory Committee, as we've talked about it internally, we've been unable to identify a funding source for the project. We don't believe that we have much room inside of the marina budget, if any room at all, to try to fund it, which means that we push it out someplace else. Is it a street project then that we need to do?
How about refunds?
Possibility. The other part of it, the more direct answer, or the simpler answer is that at this point we don't even have a scope idea for what that project would look like. Some time ago, with the previous city engineer, we got just some basic ideas as to whether we could achieve it inside of the existing curb line. Didn't look like we could. It looked like there would have to be physical improvements cutting into the yacht club area. And that was sort of the thumbnail sketch idea as to how that was going to work. And that's about as far as we were able to take it.
I would have a difficult time understanding that logic, because I've actually laid a tape on those lanes at each end of that island, and there's a designated turn lane on the Navy end of that island, there's a designated turn lane on the college end of that island, and the DOT standard is 11 feet per lane. I think that total width from curb to curb face is 42 feet, and if you already have 3 lanes in there at each end of that, I don't know how the math doesn't work to have another stacking lane in there for the Navy.
I'm just relating to you what the previous city engineer shared with me when I had him out there a couple different times to look at it. So I'm just repeating that information.
But I would still challenge that information.
Because there's one other thing that we haven't talked about, and it's critical to the conversation, where the real corner of the property is.
Yes.
Who owns what? And I don't think we want to go there in
where
this
the
discussion.
existing corner is right now, because I've read the title report, I've seen the recorded documents for that and read the history on it, and there is a line in there that says that we can maintain that. We're not prevented from maintaining it within reason.
Yeah. I think the ongoing conversation that I'm having is going to be more critical or more potentially effective than the budget.
Okay, and I know we want to stay on the budget, but it is related to the budget. It's not an item that's in here being addressed.
It's not something that we've been able to program in here, but based on information that we might get from the mayor's office, we'd be happy to come back to the council and have that as part of another conversation, like at a workshop.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then the other part of this is on the ramp. There have been so much discussion about the ramp. The ramp is a hassle for everybody who uses the launching ramp down there. Big boats, small boats, it's a hassle because of the tide and the slope of that ramp. There's nothing in here to do anything about this, either feasibility, matching funds for grants, or whatever it is. Why don't we have something that addresses that ramp in this budget?
It's actually covered in the stormwater improvement grant.
It is?
It is, yeah. To increase the slope of the ramp. Our ramp is essentially...
That's part of the stormwater.
Yes.
That would be page 74.
74, yes. Our ramp is essentially at about 6 to 8% grade. A conventional ramp is 12 to 15. That's what you see out at out at Coopville and up at Coronet Bay. So as part of that, the Salmon Recovery Fund Board, again, if the feasibility study goes through, then the ramp is part of that.
Okay, all right.
And this is where project name has a lot of significance. If we called the project steepening the boat ramp grade, then there's no funding out there for us. If we call it stormwater improvement, which is what it is, then we have an opportunity for funding.
I understand that logic. It's a darn good strategy. I'll look for the results next week. Thanks.
Any other input or questions about Marina? Okay, thank you, Chris.
Sure.
Thank you.
So we went through, we missed a few because we were looking at 19 only when we first started. I'm not sure which ones that we missed. Kathy, do you know of any? No. So some of the shop facility equipment, there was facility shelving, security camera system, and a parking lot extension that are planned out. So those are ones that weren't addressed. Under the parks, we have line 10 or 11, Tie House and Koji Park playground equipment, Neal Park pickleball courts, Sunrise Rotary Dog Park expansion, and then 7th Ave wetlands trail feasibility study. Yes. So those are ones that are out. Some of them are in 20, some of them are in 21, some of them all the way out to 2023 and 2024. So if any in there you want more discussion on. But this doesn't have to be the only conversation we have about this. You guys now have all of this draft data. you're welcome to contact us and let us know if you have further questions, clarifications needed, or anything else. This is mainly so you have the detail behind what we're wanting to bring forward in budget. So.
And I guess I just had one question. So, as you know, we've been running the capital improvement plan parallel to this process. CAC has briefed you twice at your last 2 workshops. We tentatively have it on for the November workshop as well, but that was going to be based on whether we heard a lot of substantive questions today about these projects. I don't think I'm hearing an awful lot, so I guess the real question is that for the council members who are present, do you think you would like another CIP briefing in November, or have you learned enough about the projects between the more budget-focused conversation and the CIP conversations we've already had?
When's the deadline that you published if any outside public comments were to come in? Wasn't that a December 3rd, or am I wrong on that? There was one of them you were looking for comments. Maybe it's November.
It's where we're out for we're out for the 60-day review with the Department of Commerce right now.
Oh.
And that's when that comes back. Typically, we don't have, most of our public comment, if any, comes through the Planning Commission hearing process, which will be complete next month. Yep. Yes.
Okay, I just want to be sure. My mind's going, wait a minute, there's this other date, and I just have it confused. I'm sorry. I just wanted to be sure that
there are so many review processes that we have to run parallel. So when we do something with the comprehensive plan, real quickly, we have a 60-day review period that we have to run through with the State Department of Commerce. We're in that period right now. Most times there are 0 comments that come out of that from the state side. And if they do have any, they're very rarely substantive. Most of the comments on the projects themselves will come from our Planning Commission members. So right now, I don't think there seems to be an awful lot that we would want to brief you on at your November workshop. But we can keep it on there as a placeholder and see if that's something that you would like.
Thank you. I am in tab 3 section here. And I'm looking for the revenues in anything, just page 1 in tab 3, the revenue side of this. When I look at beginning fund balance and ending fund balance, obviously those fluctuate, but I want to make sure that we're not creating excessive revenue with just a fund balance surplus. Is there anything that totals at the far end, or will we see that shows that we're not just using a whole bunch of beginning
We're not.
Fund balance
So
to
if
make
you
these
start with
numbers
the
meet.
beginning fund balance, add revenue, subtract expenses, and you get to the bottom line, very
Okay.
bottom line, that's the reduction of the expenses. The next one carries that 1370,374 up to the top, adds in revenue projections from the revenue projections you've received, reduces it by the expenditures we show, and the bottom number is now that.
So if I lay these two on top of each other, I'm gonna get a better look?
Yep.
All right.
Move that up higher. There you go. So if you see, if you start up here, beginning fund balance,
Okay.
that's the projected revenue. These are the expenses, and they're being reduced, if there's any expenses, before you come to that number. That number's transferred up.
Okay.
We add in the revenues, and we subtract out. A good one to look at is REIT. So we'll start with REIT 1 over here. It's got $1,185,000. Expected revenues of $352,000. This is the spending expected, which brings our fund balance down to this, which we transfer to the next line.
Okay.
We add in revenue. Yep.
So
All right, I feel much better about that. Thank you.
In that column, we start with 1,185,000. We end up with 662,000
356.
Well, after 2 years.
after 2 years.
Oh, 2 years, yeah, because then we add, we bring the bottom from 19 up to the top, we add in the expected revenue. We only have 50,000 in expected expenses in 2020, so that changes to 662. When you go into 2021, you have 662. You subtract, you add 359. You subtract out $1,035,000. that year, if our revenue projections come in as expected, we'll be in the hole. But when you go into 2023.
Now, which one is that again?
Keep going, next year.
REIT 1.
Next year.
In 2021.
Okay, 21. Okay.
Yep. So then you go into 2022, we get revenue projections of 362, and these are conservative. They could be higher, they could be lower, but if they come in and we go into the negative, then we'd adjust what we spend in that. But when you look at the overall, we're back up to 298. So the further out we go, the more we are making assumptions.
Yeah. Okay.
But we end the final 6 year at a positive, but it does reflect the changes.
So if we, tell me if this is a correct statement, I'm looking at the end of 2020, oh, sorry, there's more pages. Jeez. So if I end 2024, essentially bottom right-hand corner, 2,899,000. Is that all a citywide total?
That is for 2,899,002. Or are you looking at the very bottom?
Correct, 2,899,000.
That's for 2024.
Well, that's just that year.
Yeah, the very bottom below the totals is what the fund balances are anticipated to be at the end of 2024 for those specialty funds.
So I guess the question I'm trying to ask is, long term, are we nibbling away at beginning fund balance? So I would take this 2019 bottom line and kind of compare it to the 2024 bottom line.
Yep.
And that gives us an indication of overall economic health, how we're doing.
So revenue, REIT 2, we're down about 700,000 or 600,000. REIT 1, we are down about 200,000. We're about the same in park impact fees. The other two are gone. The park 125 is gone. Parks and trails, we don't really rely on that because we really don't get very much money in that one.
Okay.
The 105 impact, we only have certain projects we can use that on, and same thing with 104. So those have to be, Steve can explain, very specific projects that allow spending out of those.
Okay.
Those are growth-related projects, so we have to be able to reasonably say that the project or a significant portion of it is related to growth in order to use those funds.
So that's 105. 104 is arterials.
104, I was speaking to 105. Yeah.
Okay.
And 104 has to be a certain type of a road to be able to use
Yes, it
that
has to be an arterial.
It has to be an arterial street based upon the federal highways classification system.
But you are welcome to check our calculations. Three of us have looked at them, but that doesn't mean that we made a mistake. So if you notice something, please let me know. I would love to know before I set the budget.
So the real estate excise tax, which is REIT, is economy dependent.
Yes.
And so how do you budget out to 24?
What I did was I took average growth over the last 5 years and tried to apply it. There were peaks. I'm not budgeting as high as what we've received. We've received, I think, close to 380 in 17, but in the prior years we received less. So I tried to average that out in my growth.
So you went back 5 years.
Yeah, I did a really conservative estimate, but if our real estate values and everything tanks, those numbers will not hold up. They're based on just an average, not a huge spike. Not, like we've seen in the last couple years, trying to average that out. So if a spike comes, that'd just be excess that we could use towards projects.
Right. Okay. Council, question? Yes, Councilor Rebranding.
Generic comment, and I think it's interesting when we talk about prognosticating out at 3%, and yet we're hampered by, I think it was Initiative 747, where we can only raise property taxes by 1%. It's just a good part for the public to understand when they keep wanting to know where our tax dollars go. I think we're doing a pretty decent job.
Yes.
Long term, that math doesn't work.
So, other questions? Where do we go from here?
November 7th, I'll be bringing forward the draft budget, which will be in summary form and which may not be about, it might show more fund balance use than we'll end up using. It will also give you guys a chance to see what were the different options that we've been presented with as far as staffing, some of the other things that we have on the table. And then the goal is the 13th and the 15th that department heads will be able to come and discuss their budgets with you at workshops. And then the 20th is my goal date for bringing forward a draft final budget for you to review. We'll have a workshop where you can ask questions at it. Whatever the date the workshop is, I have no idea. It's in November after the 20th. And then December 4th, we'll have the actual request for council to approve the final budget. So.
And then we'll ask you to approve the CIP at the December 18th meeting.
So it'll be budget, and more budget. So.
Mayor Pro Tem.
So basically, the last workshop would be the last adjustment, so we pretty well have the final document before the December 3rd or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
The 20th, you should have what I think is final, but
Right.
if
That's
council
right.
doesn't think that is final, then we can talk more about it on the 28th, and then we can come back on the 4th with any changes to that final, if there is any.
We approved that first and then the CIP.
Yeah, and the CIP timing is just because of our timeline with the Department of Commerce.
Okay.
Because obviously, I think it's looking like it's going to be pretty well set. But if there were any last-minute adjustments, we could still make them.
And I will be, when I bring forward the budget, I'm going to attach the pages in a lot more readable format of the capital projects so that they're listed, as well as all the detail of the projects. That'll all be part of a final budget document. And the wording is going to ask that you appropriate the funds for 19 and 20, but these funds are appropriated for the life of the project. So we don't have to keep coming back every operating budget and saying, okay, well, we only spent this and we need to, so it'll be more of a ongoing project total that we'll have in a project accounting system, better tracking, better transparency. So that you'll be seeing that at the 20th when we bring it forward.
So you've laid this out in a pretty easy to understand way for a difficult subject. So thank you for a lot of hard work. I know a lot of extra hours. Thank you and your department especially.
Yeah, they were
all
definitely.
Staff. And the other question is, you thought this meeting was going to take 2 hours longer than it actually did.
I talk really fast.
So what questions didn't we ask that you thought we would?
You know, I didn't know what to expect since this is the first time you guys have seen a document like this. I know you've seen the CIP document, but this one was more numbers, budget related than overall plan. So I didn't know what you guys would have for questions, or if you would have things that you wanted us to research or any of that. So I didn't know. So I'm sorry I said till 5, but I.
No, don't be sorry.
No, I said till.
Oh wait, Councilor Allenberg, we might make it to 5.
At the end of this meeting, I'd like to talk to you about the revenue side. I have a couple of questions that I need to have.
Be happy to.
Better explanation.
More than happy to.
Revenue and source.
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, then I believe that we are adjourned.
Terrific.